Uh-oh.
So we are not live.
Oh no. Is this just recording?
Yeah, I just hit the button now. I am so sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds by nerds, I'm Nerdix Dave, and I've been talking to this guy over here for the past 25 minutes. I just saw a comment that says, "When does this start?" And I realized I have been in the preview mode for the whole time. I am so sorry, DM Scotty.
No problem.
For anyone who doesn't know DM Scotty, could you be so kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah. I'm this weird guy that started doing terrain for his D&D game back some years ago. Got a little bit of a following, then more of a following, and now it's exploded. The crafting has exploded, which is fantastic. I love to see that. And then that's when I started getting into coming up with my own RPG, and which probably everybody says, "Oh, I'm working on my own RPG," right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to work on an RPG that worked great at the table, with my terrain, and that's kind of how I came up with EZD6.
Yeah, well, it's funny too. Like when you said about like people are like, "Oh, people are always working on their own RPG," right?
Yeah.
But real quick, folks, as always, links are in the description. Go check out DM Scotty across the interwebs as well as the EZD6 RPG for sure. And honestly, for me, it's like we've been asked that question so many times, and I'm just like, I don't know. There's so many great games out there that I would just probably use instead. It took us doing this for like 8 years before I finally got the urge to make our own system. What was it that inspired you to make your own?
Originally, it was having a smoother experience at conventions, because you have that 4-hour block. That's it, or sometimes less, and you want a game that runs smoothly and quickly, and you get a lot of content in that 4 hours, right? So that's where I started from with this system. What can I remove from the game and still have a game that works at the table, but remove all those what I call rules blocks that you have to keep looking up. You have to look up stuff. So I wanted to remove as much of that as possible, and this game is very successful in doing that.
Yeah, we played the original version, or one of your original versions.
Yeah.
And it was like, here's an index card. Here's what you need to write down. Now throw away the index card, because the rules were like that simple.
Yes.
Which I absolutely loved it, and we were talking about it, and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to make this a game or not. Or if I'm going to try and publish this or not. I'm like, I think you should. This is fantastic. It's a lot of fun. And then you're like, well, how would I do advancement? And I'm like, I think there's room for advancement. And now it's a thing. Like, so I was so happy, as I told you before we went live, that when I saw, I think Black Magic Craft, I think I saw him promoting it, and Runehammer as well. And I was so happy. I was like, that you finally made it, because it is a great game, and it's, it is perfect for someone who's just getting started with RPGs, or like you said, at a convention, you don't want to get bogged down with rules.
Oh yeah, I love it, because advanced players don't have any advantage over newbies. So a newbie can sit down and play this and have just as much fun as an advanced player. Now, because a newbie sits down next to an advanced player. The advanced player knows all the strategies, the synergies, the little things that you can do in the game. Where a newbie just kind of knows the experience of like interacting like you would as a normal person. Like, okay, I want to go over there and do this. What do I roll, or what do I do? Yeah. So this game is so great for that, because really there is none of that. Like you say, the characters are so easy to make, and you really don't even need a sheet. That basically is that the characters just tell you what you're doing, and you tell them what to roll. And since the dice system is so easy, there's no stats in the game. The characters don't have stats. They're just boons and banes for negative effects and positive effects for your rolls. So there's no math at all in the game. Right? No math at all. So it's so simple and easy.
You did lie a little bit. There's a little bit of math. You did mention that there's a karma system that
Oh,
you
yes,
can
yeah.
can add you can add your karma to a roll to change the outcome, but that's I think that's it from what you've mentioned.
Right. That is true, because how karma works is you get a resource called karma, because all the rules that run the game are
Yeah.
almost invisible to players. The rules that favor the players are, in the open. Okay, so for example, karma. You get karma you can use whenever you fail a roll. You get a karma, and the karma can be used to change a die roll from one pip to another. So if you roll a 5 on a d6, you can use it, spend a karma, and now it's a 6. And if you're a player character, that can, or if you're playing, you get a crit that explodes. So if you roll a 6, you roll another die. If you get a 6, you do another wound, because every weapon in this system only does one wound. So there's no weapon die. You don't roll how much damage a weapon does. And then you roll again if you get another 6, but you can use karma on that to increase that. So if you get a 4 or 5, you can spend a few karma and keep that crit rolling. So pretty cool.
Were you inspired by Gather's 7D system for that mechanic?
Yes, yeah, I like games that have that exploding dice, because
the karma system, because I think
the karma,
I've only played it
yeah.
once, and it was a few years ago at this point, but I think that was one of the things about that game is, as well, is like when you failed to do something, you got a Benny for it that you could later use in the game.
Yeah, it was like a story Benny. You could affect the story.
Yeah.
That is from there, but there are a lot of systems that have kind of luck or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess this system kind of like grabs those rules that I like, and kind of adds them into the mix. So it's not the rules, it's not the individual rules themselves, but it's kind of the flavor of the soup, that's all mixed together.
Well, that's it. Like, I mean, just like you, we've been playing games for a long time. The idea at this point, the idea of inventing a new mechanic is getting harder and harder, right? But what you can do is you can kind of like put your spin on them and combine them in different ways.
Oh, totally. And that it wouldn't seem to be that that big of a deal, but it is. When you start adding that stuff into the game, hence the playtesting, it changes. Now, I also have another resource for characters called the hero die, and every player starts with one, and you can use it anytime in the game to re-roll a die, which is good, because if you roll a 1 on a d6, you can't use any karma on it. So if you get a 1, you can't use karma on a 1. It's just an automatic failure. And I often do in the game, when they're going through some area or something, say they're sneaking through an area that's like there's a bunch of sleeping orcs or something, right? I'll say, okay, everybody, roll the die, but don't roll anything but a 1.
Yeah.
Right? That's a term in the game. So you can do that for that kind of stuff. Say you're on a rickety scaffolding, and it's coming apart. You can say, okay, you climb up, but don't roll the 1. But the fun thing about the 1 is you can't use karma on it, but you can use your hero die. But once you use that hero die, it's burned up.
What is one of the most memorable moments you've had playing the system so far?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so it was one of my last big play tests. I had my daughter and her friends, and we had a day-long session. I actually got a couple rules that I changed and added from that session. I had a couple characters playing conjurers, which are the wizards of the system, and they start with a couple scrolls, which are like more traditional, like D&D spells, but they're one use. The scroll burns up when you use it. So they were trying to get to this boss creature, which was like this enormous bug-like thing that had been mutated because this moon was breaking up, and the moon chunks were coming down. The little moon, they called them moonstone, and they were highly magical. And this thing was eating the moonstone, so it was this enormous version of the monster, right? It was just this huge bug thing. So they were like, oh my God, why are we going to beat this? So my daughter's like, hold on. So she's like, she has this scroll that slows down time. So the warrior, the brute of the group, which is kind of like a barbarian, ran in and did like all these attacks on it, and also crit like crazy, and killed it in one, essentially one attack.
Yeah.
So it was just like everybody's like, yeah, because when you're rolling those crits, like the excitement is just getting bigger and bigger because you're doing another strike. You're doing another strike of damage because everything has strikes of damage, and the characters only actually have 3 strikes each.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're like when that starts rolling and you're like, yeah, and it's just like it gets crazy excitement at the table, and that was just a super cool combat moment. It was funny though. My daughter in that game chose to be a conjurer who was you choose circles of sorcery, and she was an illusionist, but she was but she chose to be blind. She was a blind illusionist, right?
Okay.
Where illusion in my game is not projection per se, it's actually you're just projecting into the mind of the target. So they're not actually, there's no projection in front of them. It's just they're seeing it in their
just
mind.
They see it.
Yeah, just they see it. So there was one point in the game where she was like, oh, I'm going to disguise, so-and-so to look like, I'm like, well, you can't do that because you're blind and you haven't seen what they look like.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, oh, right, I didn't think about that. And then I gave her a karma for that, but, it's like, karma you can pass out, like good role-playing moments, fun moments. And like I say, if you fail a roll, it takes the sting out of it because you get a treat. You get a karma.
Yeah, for sure. Now, is Easy D6 a system, a game? Is it a setting?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of all of the above. The setting is implied in it. It doesn't have a setting in the book, but I am actually working on that right now, called The Land of Graxel, and it's from my own home campaign. And basically, the world is going to be made up of quests, so it's very actionable. Someone could get this book. You don't have to read 300 pages of lore and then try to make your own quests around it. You get this book, there's going to be a bunch of quests already set, and you learn the world through the quests. So that'll be really cool. And that's the way I do it in my campaign. Like, I don't have necessarily a set map. You start somewhere and then you work out from there, and then the world is built by your experience.
That is actually like the best DMing advice I ever received. And I feel like, I don't know if it was
great.
A Dragon Magazine article, or I don't know if you remember the AD&D World Builders Guide. It's like just a softback supplement. But when they're like, you just need to worry about the place where your players are right now, and you can just build out from there. I was like, that's amazing, because you know what? Yeah. And otherwise, you're just doing a lot of world building that they'll probably never interact with.
Exactly.
If you like that, that's fine.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, right. If you like doing that, but realize that they're never going to see like 90% of that.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? They'll never know it, or they'll never see it unless it directly interacts with the story.
It's really important as a GM to know who you're writing, what parts you're writing, who you're writing those parts for, right? Are you writing them because you like to do this, or because this is things that your players are going to interact with and enjoy? And I think the problem is when we think that we're writing like world building stuff for ourselves, and we feel like we need our players to know this too, whether they want to or not.
Right. It's much more fun for the players to discover that stuff in the game. So like I have an adventure where there's this halfling named Vendini, and he's like a Indiana Jones type character, fantasy version. And there's like little clues of him everywhere. They never meet him. You know what I'm saying? They never meet Vendini, but there like little clues of him everywhere they go. Like Vendini was here, or they find a journal with a few tasty tidbits in it. that kind of stuff. Make that lore tasty. Make it yummy. Make them want to eat it.
Yeah, like if you feel like you really need to like have the king's lineage known to your players, make it a puzzle or a riddle for them to figure use the make it a piece of information to figure out a puzzle or riddle, so then they care. Like they're like, oh, I need to know what happens next in order to do this thing. They get vested, right? It's not about this ambiguous character they don't really care about. It's about what they're trying to do,
and it becomes important to them. So that becomes important and memorable to them.
Yeah,
and that's how they remember your world, how they interacted with it.
All right, different direction now. Tell us about time traveling cyborg teddy bears.
Okay. Now, Dave and I were talking earlier about this, but I have hacked this system to run all kinds of genres. Sci-fi, of course, fantasy, I have modern day vampire hunters. And the one he's talking about are Terminator teddy bears, right? So Jeremy was at that game, Jeremy from Black Magic Craft, and he told me this is the best game I have ever played in. Like after the game, he told me that. And Gareth has said that him and the two of them looked at each other and said, wow, this game is amazing. I've never played in a game this good. But anyways, the game was, because it moves so fast and quickly, and the rules are like running invisibly, and you're doing all this stuff, So basically the Terminator teddy bears there was going to be a world child day, and what was going to happen is all the world leaders finally got together and said, okay, we've got to turn the world around. We've got to do something. So we're gonna do something for the children. The children are gonna have a World Children Day, and every child is gonna get their own teddy bear, their own AI teddy bear that will keep them emotionally well adjusted, and they'll have a friend for life, right? Because they'll never die. Well, it doesn't work out that way. So in that time period, this time travel corporation gets these people together, and the problem is they're not like elite psyops, kind of things, like warrior, like elite soldiers and doctors. They're just normal Joes, because the drug that you use to time travel only works on a certain small percentage of metabolism people, right? So these are like, line cooks and car salesmen and stuff like that, right? They're just normal Joes, just normal you and me, okay? So these characters start out with like no skills. They don't have any skills. It's only the basic die that they roll. That's it. Nothing else. So they all go to this thing, and they take the drug, and they travel to the future. And when they get there, they're in Washington. And when they get there, it's like an apocalyptic wasteland. And they hear this squeaky little voice. It's like, oh, hi there. And they turn around, and there's this little teddy bear standing there. And when I actually role played it at the game at the table, I had a little teddy bear mask that I slipped on, and a creepy little teddy bear mask. So that was a fun little, I'm always theatrical. At the table. So they're like, okay, and so when it's like, oh, gather around, and when they do, the teddy bear throws this bomb down that like gases them, and so they're, some of them pass out, and some of them, and then these rebels show up, and there's all this battle and everything. So, and they're like, what is going on? But another fun thing I did, since they didn't really have any skills in the game, was the drug mutated them. So when that all started, I passed around a sheet of paper that had different powers on it, and they got like a minor superpower from the drug mutating them. So some of them were like wall crawling. One was like minor telekinesis. One was like sure shot, you never missed when you shot a gun. Just fun little things that would enhance the game. And it was a blast. It was such a blast. I had Terminator teddy bears on tricycles, powered tricycles that were gunning at them. People purple eaters that would try to grab people and like literally swallow them and take them back to their base. So just all kinds of crazy fun.
So a couple comments real quick. Brian Smith, Scotty inspired me to turn my wife's mountain of Amazon boxes into terrain. Thanks, my dude. Also from Brian Smith, Teddy Ruck's kill.
Yes, yes. Yeah, Teddy Ruxskill. I did have the central computer that they went after, and it was a silver teddy bear shaped thing, and it was like it was basically a game I had salvaged from a secondhand store. I think it was like a little teddy bear game where you would throw balls in the mouth and they would go in the gut, and it would had like a clear thing on the gut. You could see the balls inside, but I put like lights inside of it and painted it silver, and it was Ruxpin 3000 or whatever. The central computer.
And that's the thing, like this game, right? Just remember, DM Scotty is always doing things with terrain. So like you made all the Terminator teddy bears,
yes,
and stuff as well. Like I
had miniatures, yeah, for all that, yeah.
I remember seeing it on Facebook. Someone had shared it from Mason. And it's like this is fantastic. This looks like a lot of fun.
Oh, it was a total blast. And since these rules are so invisible, they just don't get in the way. It's just the excitement builds and builds. And I often get if I'm in rooms with other people, I often get yelled at because the table gets too excited. Because there's no what I call rules breaks to slow the game down, right? You're not like, oh, hold on, let me check the spell or let me check this rule, and then the game screams to a halt, right? While you're all sitting there just kind of looking at each other. This takes those out, so the game never slows down, right? And people get super excited, So.
Well, also too, I feel like the other thing you get, the less rules you have in the game, you get more people going, hey, I want to try and do this. Because there's nothing on their character sheet that tells them they can or they can't. It's just like, here's an idea. And I think like, when you have really complex character sheets or really fleshed out technical rulesy games, it kind of kills creativity in that way.
Yeah, it does. Because there's nothing on your sheet telling you can't. You can't do that. Yeah, or these are the rules for that, Wait a minute, you got to figure out how to interact that with that request with the rules.
Yeah.
There's none of that. Yeah.
So the next step is kind of your world laid out as quests.
Uh-huh.
And then after that, are you thinking of moving into other genres, expansions?
Yeah, definitely I want to do other genres. People can come up with this themselves, but sometimes it's easy to see, oh, here's what Scotty did, and it worked. Because I've run all of these, the ones that I've told you, I've run all of them, literally run all of them. So I know how they work and how they don't work, and I tweaked. So to have that as an example can help players who want to do their own kind of genre or game.
So Zombie Kitten says, I've only discovered DM Scotty through Easy D6. Loving the book really opens my mind to different styles of play. Similar feeling when I discovered Dungeon World. So yes. I think that's pretty high praise. I mean, Dungeon World's been around for a while and has been praised.
Huge praise, and that was Dungeon World was definitely an inspiration to me, no question. That was a brain opener for me, a brain open moment.
So Chris says, I love the rules of Easy D6 are about as difficult to explain as a frat party drinking game.
Right. Yeah, within 10 minutes or less, everyone will understand the game.
Yeah.
You can't say that about a lot of games.
That is true.
There's always something that comes up. Oh, what about this or what about that? Yeah.
So Brian has a question. My cuz just opened a game store and it's heavily populated by Warhammer. They have some open tables. Though any recs for a game idea to show off Easy D6 to the skirmish dudes?
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, I think it, Easy D6 is inspired by skirmish games also, because skirmish games are kind of like RPG light, right? In a lot of ways, you're just using a lot more models. It's because of since you're using more models, it has to be lighter than an RPG, right? So I think Easy D6 kind of skirts that line between the two.
Do you have video series about like these games that you have run at conventions? Like, here's the game, here's how it plays, and here's how you build the terrain.
I do have some that show terrain I built for the Easy D6 games, I don't have like a whole direct through. Like here's Easy D6 the planning mode, Easy D6 the building mode, Easy D6. Yeah, I don't have any direct through videos, but that's a great idea. I should really do that now that I have all components essentially of the system. I have the system. I have, of course I have my terrain. So it'd be nice to, how it can help to watch a DM create an adventure. I think this could be helpful too, that you see, how I take the rules and port them into like, oh, here's the terrain I need, because it's like that. You have to be very clinical about thinking about, okay, what do I need for the game? Okay, we've got all the imaginative components. What do I need physically for the game? Right?
Yeah, like so the game that you ran for us, I think that would be an awesome series where you do like a series of like, here's how you make all this stuff, and then you do a video where it could be even time lapsed, where it's just like a narration of minus the players, just from the GM side of like how the adventure flows and transitioning through all the scenes, and just like showing off the terrain would be kind of cool.
That's an excellent idea. Like, okay, so here's what would happen, or the players would meet here and then they would go here, or whatever. Here's some possibilities, and then actually set up terrain to like physically show that. That's neat.
Yeah, and I also think it'd be an easy video for you to do compared to like a lot of the videos you've done in the past.
Right.
I don't even like terrain, but sometimes I would watch DM Scotty's videos.
Well, thank you.
So, both you and DMG Info are great for that stuff. You make it interesting and fun, and the stuff that you guys would make was just mind blowing.
Oh, thanks. So. Yeah, it really, really adds to the game. There's nothing wrong with Theater of the Mind. I use it all the time, actually. I don't build everything. If the players are going to a town or city, I don't put out every house and building in the town. We just role play all that, right? And if something happens in the town, like they get jumped, then maybe I'll throw terrain down and okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So it depends how far you want to take it. There's some people that build a whole table, of a town or a city. That's fine, but that's not the way I do it. So I use both. I use all the tools available, Theater of the Mind as well as terrain. But terrain is great for the action-oriented stuff because it focuses everybody's attention on this miniature world, and the miniature world becomes like a movie you're watching. It becomes real to the players, right? They're like looking down on this and they're imagining themselves in this world, and it becomes the focus. And it's like people really intensely focus on that, and it's really, and I think it can. Some people might say it kind of takes you out of the game, but I think it can draw you in more, especially if you combine it with the role play and that kind of thing. If you're playing it like a war game, that's where it can be like terrainy and war gamey. But if you're describing stuff that's happening as well as seeing it play out in front of you, that becomes like a magic moment.
You should do like a talking head video on the difference between a narrative use terrain versus tactical use of terrain, because if I recall correctly, the adventure you run for us is not gridded. It is more like a diorama. No. It's just it is just the I guess I don't want to say terrain. It is just the objects that you're seeing. It just puts you in the place, right? It's a lot different than when, like, okay, I'm playing D&D and the DM's like, and these monsters attack and they put out some, terrain and stuff. It doesn't make me think narratively in the least. Like, I mean, I just ran in a session a couple weeks ago and it happened in a city and I laid out all the city stuff, but it didn't feel narrative at all. It was like we switched from RP mode to like, okay, now we're gonna have this fight. And it just felt like they almost feel like different things or different games. Whereas when you've run it, it just flows so smoothly and seamlessly. I don't feel like someone just broke out the terrain for the fight. Yeah,
that's the trick. I call it the shell game. That's the shell game of using terrain. Like, don't cross the stream, don't break the streams. Keep the RP going, keep the players engaged, while you're like, doing the shell game, while you're getting the stuff set up. And yeah, because that's a lot what a lot of problem becomes with using terrain. It's like, okay, now we're going from imaginative mode to like war game mode, and yeah, that's a huge problem with terrain. And you got to be careful with that. You want to keep them in RP mode. Just because you got terrain, you don't have to break RP mode.
The one group that I run for, they're very, very heavily terrain oriented, because I'm GMing a group that Ted was GMing, and he uses a lot of terrain, and I'm more theater of their mind. And what I found was, whether I break out terrain or not, if I don't, they will. They just start assembling.
Oh, really?
They just start assembling the battlefield.
Oh, wow. Well, some people are much more visually oriented. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes some players just have a really hard time keeping track of what's happening in theater of the mind, right? That's one advantage terrain has. It keeps everybody on the same page. So that's one thing I like it. Like it's a little movie playing out in front of you, and everybody knows what's going on. And with terrain, I think another fallacy can be that like you'll show everything at once. Like, you don't have to put everything down at once. Like, if something appears or the players discover something, then put it down. Don't put everything down like a board game, right? So the players come into the room, show them what they would see from that vantage point. If they move in, like, oh wait, there's a chest back behind here, or there's something over here. There's a pit over here in the corner we didn't see in the darkness. Don't play that way, and that goes a long way to RPing the terrain stuff.
And that's a great point. Like I want to say, like, I would say, playing in your terrain game is like a stop motion scene.
Oh, that's a great analogy, dude. Yeah.
I was really struggling to figure out how to articulate, exactly what it felt like, because it felt so different. Like I said, like, playing in your terrain game compared to all the other games I played into, it kind of felt like I've never played in a terrain game before that point. And like you mentioned, when someone puts out like all the stuff, it's already there, or they've got it, they're just like, it's all their Dwarven Forge and they're just peeling back, what's covering it or something. Mm-hmm. Like I think it sets the expectation at the table, and you sit down and there's this huge thing that's been assembled, and the players are going to be like, oh, I guess this is what we're doing tonight.
Right. There's no surprise. So I don't like to do that. I don't like to have a table set up. I never do that. I never pre-set up a table, because then it doesn't feel like there's any exploration or discovery. Yeah. Because like, oh, I know we're going to do this huge dungeon today. What I'm saying? It's covered. I don't know what it is, but I know we're going to do this huge thing today. Right?
And plus, when I see that stuff, all I can think of is like, that will be the night my players are like, we're just hanging out in the tavern.
Right, exactly.
And you just spent 4 hours assembling this thing.
Right, exactly. And if they want to do that, let them do that. Don't, because you set up the dungeon that took a day to set up, don't make them leave the tavern. Don't force them. Don't railroad them. If they want to hang out in the tavern and find out more information or whatever, or role play, let them do it. That can be the danger with terrain too, especially when you get so into it or invested, money wise or setting up wise, that now you want to force the players to do this. Now they have to do this. Right.
Yeah, you've definitely elevated it to an art form.
Well, thank you. I've worked on it a lot of years. So in fact, and see what works and what doesn't work with my tables. So yeah.
So Goblin says EZD6 is amazing. It blew me away, and it got my imagination firing again after hacking games to burnout, and my players love it. So, and also too, it's like, it's so hard to get people to not play 5e D&D, right? Or usually it's whatever version of D&D is out,
Right. A million versions, right?
When you have something like this,
whatever your flavor,
you can just start.
Yeah.
And, people don't have to learn a bunch of rules. I totally love that, right? So because it's so intimidating for for a gaming group to be like, "What are we doing? Yeah, what do I have to learn? How many pages do I have to read?"
Right. Exactly. It's so light and easy.
So how did you? So you wrote this, you designed the system, and it's being published through Runehammer. How did you guys hook up?
Oh yeah, this is great. So initially I kind of published the rough of the rules through my Patreon, and it was initially called /hack boom. So that was the initial name of it, the Easy D6 system, essentially. And then Brandish is actually one of my patrons from Runehammer, Brandish Gilhelm. So he contacted me and said, dude, because he's been a big fan of mine, and I always supported him very early in his career. I even did like ICRPG videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so he's always been a big fan of mine. He calls me Yoda. So he was like, dude, I want to make this happen for you. We're gonna make this book happen. So let's do this. I said, oh yes, please. So he has publishing experience. He knows what works. He's published, books and everything. He's got all this experience. So that was just a great help to me. So we started doing the system, and it's really coming together. We're both loving it. The presentation, we got Sean Bova to do the art, who is amazing. Here's the cover that he did. Oops. Here's the cover he did, but there's these great illustrations of the book. Let me give you an example. Like here's the hero paths. So here's the conjurer.
A little bit higher.
Oh yeah.
Like if you hold it almost in front of your chin, that's like, well, that. There you go.
Darn it.
The gelatinous cube behind you keeps wanting to eat it.
So here's like a conjurer, which is like a wizard, a friar, a beastmaster. You can tell I spelled inspired by 80s movies. Here's a scald. So all this great art. So we found him to do the art. A monster. Brandish was like, well, we need kind of a different style than my style. Let's find somebody. So we got Bova, and he actually did all the illustrations of the book, which is fantastic. I love his work. It has this whimsy, but it's also super detailed and cool, so it really gets the flavor of the game. And so we got that. Once we got the artwork and the Brandish's amazing layout, and then the green color scheme and all that, the slime green color, because I'm always like goo in my games. Like there's always like slime, goo, ichor, all kind whatever gory stuff I can have in the game is always in the game. I love to be very visceral about it, so that's kind of where that came from. But anyways, so we got this book together. It's like, wow, this is really cool. So basically Brandish was going to be like, okay, here's your book. Now here you go, go off and, sell it or whatever. But I was like, hey, I have an idea, I think this, book really fits with your brand. And he agrees with me. And he was like, why don't we put it under the Runehammer, games? So I'm his first game that's not of his creation to be published. And from talking to him, I think he wants to do this with more people, which I think is a great idea. So to get really nice, good systems out there, so I was so happy to be under the Runehammer brand. It's a great trusted brand, and for him to put his stamp on the game really makes me proud that he would accept that. So that's how it became a Runehammer game, and I couldn't be happier with this book. Let me show you real quick. There are two different styles. There's the hardcover, which has this great art. It's a monster called the Merc Strike on it, and then this is of course me. We call them rabble rousers in the game instead of GMs, but here me rabble rousing the group in the soft cover. So that's the difference between the hardcover and the soft cover.
Which there's links in the description, so you can go find those on. Are they on? They're on Drive Through RPG.
Mm-hmm. At the moment, yep.
Awesome. So
and it's platinum level,
which is pretty impressive. 1,000 copies.
June 8th is when we started selling it. My birthday, which was really another super cool.
So
thing.
1 month exactly to today.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. 1 month. Yep.
That's pretty awesome. So when it comes to game design, do you feel like you're going to just be making, easy D6 RPG expansions and things for that? Or do you feel like at some point you're going to move in a different direction and be like, all right, I've done everything I want to do with this game, and now I'm going to make another game?
Right. I don't have any plans to make another game yet. Because this really has a lot of options with, like, because I'm doing the world book and work, the other iterations of EZD6. So, but Brandish is also working on a third book, which would kind of be like leveling up your characters, a bit like leveling up your characters. It's not literally leveling up your characters, but it's in that vein. It's in that kind of thing. If you want to like have, characters that kind of change and grow, not just through campaign progression and stuff like that, but like through literal stuff. He is actually working on that book, so that's pretty cool.
So I find, like, when I talk to people, there seems to be like two different camps, right? Someone will make a game and it's like they're going to make that game for the next 40 years. And then there's other people that are more like tinkerers, and they're like, all right, I made this, done. Now I'm making another one. And it's like they don't want to ever go back to them. They just want to, like, they've already done that.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I don't know, I'm so in love with this game at the moment. Maybe maybe in the future I'll say, here's something we could do. But I'm so in love with this game that really it's almost hard for me to play other games, because I get frustrated at all the other stuff that doesn't need to be glommed on, into the game, because I've seen the way you can do it without having all that stuff.
That's like the best reason to make a thing is you made the thing you wanted, right? And I think that really comes through. I'll talk to people and I'm like, well, what made you decide to make this or do it this way? And I must say, whenever I hear the words, I just thought it would be different, I just hard eye roll, right? Like
right.
Like, because, like, from my perspective, I never thought we were going to make our own game just never felt inspired to do it. I felt like when anything I wanted to do, someone else has already done it and done it better, and I could just use that. But I am always interested to hear why someone makes their own game and what they decide, what was the impetus. And my favorite thing is when they're like, well, I had this particular problem and I looked and I looked and I looked and I couldn't find it out there. So I went and solved it myself. Compared to I talk to someone, they're like, well, I've been playing 5e D&D for a while and it wasn't quite doing everything I wanted to do. I'm like, well, what other games did you check out? And they're like, none. I'm like, you're kind of like they're kind of reinventing something somebody else has already did. So it's kind of like, without knowing it, not intentionally. Yeah. But, so I do love, like, when you're like you said, it's like, well, I wanted a game at a convention. I could just run it. It would be smooth. There's no page turning. We just stay in the action. Exactly.
And that's how I approached it. That was the first thing, it's like, okay, how can I, take all the extra rules that aren't needed out of the game so it runs as smoothly as possible at the table.
Yeah.
But still have a system.
And to be honest, like, a lot of the games that do have a lot of rules in them, they've developed from people making a game that is far less complex, and someone asking that question and someone going, oh, maybe I should fix this for people, and they add the rules. Like, I feel like that's how 3rd edition came to be and Pathfinder came to be. But you lose something in there when you start adding in the rules for everything.
You do,
because now you have to look up those rules because they exist. You need to know how everything works. And I do like the more narrative approach of 5e, where it's just about rulings instead of rules. But then, like, you can take that even further with rules light systems and story-based systems like the Easy D6 RPG, which I even prefer even more. The older I get, the less rule books I want to read.
That's exactly my sentiment. Or the less time. Just the less time you have,
here's like a great game, right? And you're like, hey, do you want to play this great, awesome game? And
Yeah.
they're like, yes. And you're just like, here, just read this book. And it's like
Right.
500 pages.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, fortunately, I will say, Cypher System, there's a lot of those pages you don't need to read in order to enjoy that game.
No, you don't.
But it is intimidating for a new player. And they're like, oh, all I have to do is read this 500-page book and then I can have fun.
Right. Right. Because in the book, I say, if you don't want to read these rules, which is like 20 pages, like go light pages, like go make your character. Like it walks you through a character.
Did you do a too long didn't read in your own rule book?
Yes. I said, if you don't want to read this, make the rabble rouser explain the rules and you go make your character.
Yeah.
Go here and make your character. Because it's the cool thing about the character is that they're so easy to make, and you don't necessarily need to know a lot about the world. Like you don't have to have a primer in the world to make a character.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and almost all the inclinations are good for any character. So you can't really screw up a character. You know what I'm saying? You can't bork your character. You can't mess it up. Now I can't be this at level 20 or level 15 or whatever. Everything is good for everybody. So it's like you pick your hero path, you pick your species, you pick your inclinations, which are 2 or 3, 3 if you're a human, 2 if you're another race, and then I have aspects in the game which are like just a statement you can make about your character that you can role play, or you could get karma for in the game. So you could do anything. Like you could say your character is unemotional, so that's the way you play your character, or you could say your character's a light sleeper, or that they're the best cook in the land, or whatever, or their town they're known as the best bread maker or whatever. You can have anything for the aspect. And what I also say is, like, I don't want anything to slow down character creation. So if you can't, decisions are hard sometimes, and if you can't decide on that for your character, just make it up later in the game.
Yeah.
Like, this is the character I want to play. Okay, I have this. I've had players do that where I can't think of any aspects I want for my character. I'll just wait until we play, and then like, my character's kind of bossy. My character's a bossy or whatever. You just come up with it from actual play.
When you're discussing like the character creation, and the aspect, it kind of makes me think of Shadow of the Demon Lord a little bit, because like when you make a character in that game, you make very little choices when you first start.
Right.
One of the few choices you do make is you pick professions, and they don't do anything. It's just a word on your character sheet, right? They don't do anything unless your DM or GM decides they do, right? You're like, I have a hunter profession and I'm trying to track through the woods, and they might give you a boon for doing that, but otherwise there's nothing to look up, right? Because just that word is all there is. Right.
And what I love, also, that something this game has that a lot of games don't have is magic users or conjurers are just as easy to make as other characters. You can make a conjurer as fast as you can make a warrior, which that is very rare in other games, because unless you know the system very well, okay, I've got this many spells, I've got to decide how many I'm going to take and which spells, and that there are people that can't decide and they agonize over that, and then of course they take the wrong spells because it's not the one they needed for the adventure. So with this game, when you create your character with the hero path, the conjurer, you take your inclinations, then you pick a couple aspects, and then you pick a school of sorcery. That's it. You're done for your character creation. You don't have to agonize over spells or go through spell lists, or in the game since the spells are like cast to use to cast, you don't have to keep spell points, or you don't have to keep spell slots. There's no bookkeeping. There's no bookkeeping of that kind of sort in this game. So the casters are casting in reaction to what's happening. They're not casting by, okay, let me look at my spell list. Let's see what I got. That doesn't fit. No, well, hold on. I gotta see. And then that's another rules break that you gotta wait. Also, money in the game is abstracted to like pauper, poor, moderate, wealthy, lordly wealth, kingly wealth, because money is a great role-playing aspect to a game, but I don't want to be an accountant when I play a game. I don't want to keep track of how many gold coins and silver coins and all this BS that I have, right? If you have a lot of money, just say the character has a lot of money, right? But it can be a great role-playing thing, because say you find this kingly hoard somewhere, right? Say you kill a dragon and you find a kingly hoard. Okay, it's still part of the game, because even though you're not counting how much that is, you roughly know how much it is because it's a kingly hoard. But how are you going to transport it? How are you going to get it from this lair, to somewhere you could even store it? And if you do, maybe the dragon comes back, burns down your warehouse, and like steals the gold back. It's like, so that's a great story element, and you didn't have to do any accounting.
I think the first system that I ever played that abstracted with wealth like that is probably Marvel Superheroes. The phase rip system, where you literally had to score kind of the same way you did for any of your stats, and if depending on what that stat was versus how much something cost, determined whether you could get it or you need to roll to get it, and how hard that roll would be.
Right.
Which was kind of cool. And then other systems have gone and made it even vaguer. Like Cypher System's a good example of that.
Exactly.
Where it's like, it's affordable, it's moderately expensive, it's expensive, all kinds of things like that. And then you don't have to do the bookkeeping. It's like, can I buy it or not buy it? Is what it comes down to, and that's all the players ever really care about.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't care about keeping track of I have exactly 100 silver or whatever.
But and you can use the motivation the same whether you're bean counting or not, right? It's like, you're short 50 gold pieces. What are you going to do to go find 50 gold pieces? Or you just be like, you're a little short, but you could probably figure out ways to scrape up that little bit of extra that'll get you to where you need to be for this one-time purchase. How are you going to do that?
Yeah. Oh wait, Geoff owes us that money. Let's go get it out of him.
Yeah.
Remember that 100 gold he borrowed from us or whatever? Let's go get that money from him.
Now they're roughing up NPCs.
Right.
Yeah.
PC's favorite pastime.
Do you have a regular in-person game?
I do. Yeah, I do. Although it is not Easy D6, it's actually D&D. But I do play a lot of Easy D6, with other groups and stuff.
Yeah. You couldn't get them to convert, huh?
Yeah. Well, I did play a campaign with Easy D6, which was so fun. I used actually my North Road book, which is on questgivers.com, and I wrote it with Gareth at DMG Info, and it works great because it's system neutral, so you can run it with any system. It works great for Easy D6. I'm actually working right now on the stats for all the Easy D6 stats for all the stuff in the book, so that'll be available. But yeah, the book itself, you could buy it and just run it, and it works great with Easy D6.
I was just thinking of your regular group; they must be so spoiled.
They are.
The question is, do they know they're spoiled or not, though?
No, they think I'm so mean and horrible, I'm like, I am so nice to you guys, you don't even know.
You don't know how awesome of a GM I am.
Yeah. That's the trick. You make them think you're like awful and terrible, and then you're like the Oz head, You're really like the little old man behind the head, cranking the gears.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you want them to see you as kind of the villain while you're like secretly rooting for them to succeed.
Exactly. Yeah, I love the heroes. I hate killing any characters. I hate it. But if it happens, it happens. And it's part of the drama of the game. It's taken that out. Is taking part of that drama out, and
I will say I'm rather indifferent towards character death, but whether it's mine or theirs. So so there's that. Like, I don't care when my characters die in games.
That's awesome.
but that carries through, I guess, when I'm the GM as well.
Yeah.
But again, like, you know, there's no challenge in trying to kill the characters in the game anyway. Like, you have all the resources.
Yeah, I never just try to kill characters. You know, that's a bad GM right there. Yeah, adversarial GM. Yeah, you want to have it dangerous and fun, but you know, don't the players already have it rough enough. Don't be their enemy.
Yeah, that's an era of GMing that can go away for sure.
Yes, please. Please go away.
I feel like that was a lot of my early gaming.
Well, and I get that. You know, there was really the hobby has evolved and how people GM and DM and you know, and we evolve as people, right? So, yeah, you know, and experience at the table.
How did you get started in gaming?
It was very early. I was like in high school when I was in high school back in the Flintstone days. We would do our character sheets on little tablets and chisel it in. But yeah, I got started back in then. You know, the early red box and you know all the advanced D&D and all that stuff. So I was then, yeah. The D&D scare, you know, the
Satanic Panic.
The Satanic Panic, yeah.
So how did you find D&D? Or I should say, back then I felt like D&D found you.
Yeah, right. It's kind of funny though that you know immediately I was attracted to minis and terrain.
Okay.
Even in very early D&D, like I bought a lot of those, you know, the lead minis when they were first out. You know, all those different ones, and I collected minis, and you know, that I bought dungeon. You could actually buy like cardboard dungeon tiles from some places, and I actually, you know, got those. So I was even at that early time, I was like a representative DM, you know, like trying to do the terrain stuff. But
was it Raul Partha? They went way back, right from the beginning.
Oh yeah, Raul Partha, yeah. And I really got to owe it to my dad for this addiction to like sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah,
because he introduced me to all this, and he's been a DJ his entire life. He's retired now, but he would get all these promotional tickets for like the drive-in. So we would go to see all these schlocky movies at the drive-in. And you know, what a great way to see Jason the Argonauts, you know, on a big screen. Instead of your TV, you know, all those Ray Harryhausen classics. I'm just a huge Ray Harryhausen fan. And so all that influenced me, you know, and of course, D&D, boom, it's just like immediate attraction. Oh, we can make our own movies, essentially.
Yeah. I wonder how many people on here watching or will watch don't even know what a drive-in is.
Right.
There's only a couple left in the country.
Yeah, exactly.
So in New Jersey, we've got one that, you know, for the longest time I try and take my kid, make sure like at least once a summer to hit it, you know. And so they're always like double features. So you watch like two movies, you know, basically for the price of one.
Right.
And it's just a totally different experience.
It is. And a lot of people won't have that experience.
Yeah. That's why we really tried to get our kids there at least once a summer, just so they'd be like, so they had this thing to tell their kids about someday, and the kids have no idea what they're talking about.
Right, like a record player, you know, whatever. It's like what?
Yeah.
A phone booth, you know.
Or it was my nephew when he was younger, and they're talking about like the cordless phones. They would always lose them, and they're like, they should have like a string or a rope or something attached to the base, to the cordless part of it, so you don't lose it.
Well, let me tell you.
Let me tell you about that. They're like reinventing the wheel.
Back in days of lore. There was the cord.
It is. So, prior to Easy D6 RPG, what was your favorite system?
I kind of shop around. I mean, I've played a lot of Apocalypse Engine. I played a lot of Cypher. I particularly liked the strange setting for the Cypher. Are you familiar with it?
I've read one of the novels, and I'm familiar with it, but I don't actually own that version of Cypher or that game.
I really like the idea of like these kind of other layers of reality that are around the Earth, and that you can translate to these realities, and you fit into the reality. So when you translate, if you're like like a gun-toting agent on Earth, you might be a warrior, in the fantasy realm. You'll have a sword instead of a gun, and chainmail instead of your Kevlar. So I really like that aspect of it, and it's pretty trippy. So I really latched onto that. My group really liked it too. So yeah, I played Cypher with another person. We were like horror. It's like a modern horror. A friend of mine was running it. I was a character, but yeah, I like Cypher quite a bit. But I also found out that playing Cypher, I like running Cypher better than I like playing.
Okay.
Not because it's a hard system or anything, but because as your characters tier up, they keep getting more and more stuff that's very situational. And it's hard to remember all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you get a +1 bonus if it's Tuesday at night, or whatever. I mean, that's an extreme example, but I'm not very far off.
Cypher's a really weird animal in the sense that
but I love
it is
running
the most specific generic game I've ever played.
Yes. That's a great way to describe it.
It's like they tried to make it generic, and I don't know if this is because of them reverse engineering it from Numenera, or or if it's just the way the game is. But it's very, like, in broad strokes, it's very generic. But then you start getting into playing it, and like you said, there's like a lot of specifics baked into it that like how would I ever make this work in anything other than this one scenario or this one type of game?
Right. And I don't think it's great. They try to sell it as like an any system where like, an action, whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's better for like supernatural type systems. It fits that type of thing, whether it's a horror, supernatural horror or fantasy. I don't think it's so great for like, hard spy drama or something.
Yeah, we used it for a supers game, and it worked, but you really had to like
I've never done that, but I can see how you've got to cheese it a bit.
Yeah, jiggle the powers a little bit to get what you're looking for. And a lot of times it was just like, well, this is kind of what I want, but then like you start going down that path and it totally blows it out further than you really ever wanted. So it's like a lot of times I found myself going, can I just like tone this down or change this? And then like I ran a game called Moon Rises, and that was basically we started playing it in 2020, which, did you know that's the same year of Thundar the Barbarian that takes place?
Oh no, I did not. That's cool.
And I totally like kind of like ripped off Thundar the Barbarian as kind of that's a fun setting.
Yeah.
So it was like sci-fi. It was like science fantasy mostly. And it really worked for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I can see it working for that. Yeah. Great.
So we are well past the hour mark at this point.
Oh, are we? Okay. Oh yeah, right, because we kind of started late. Sorry, guys.
But we're right around the hour mark for as when we actually started live. So final thoughts before we head on out?
So this my system may not be for everyone. I mean, it's definitely a light system. It requires something from the game master, although I think you can quickly learn the system. I have a lot of hints how, if you kind of do these things, you will get a good game, you'll get a good result. So don't be intimidated by that. But if you're looking for crunch, this is not the system for you. This is all flavor with minimal rules. And if you're looking for a more story-driven game where, instead of like what David said, where you had to negotiate to make the powers what you want, the powers you can just imagine what the power is, then this is the kind of system for you.
Yeah, so definitely check that out. It's down in the description. You can find the link. Thanks for coming on, Scotty. Really appreciate it. Until next time, everyone, stay nerdy.
Hey, stay nerdy, guys. And thanks, David, for having me. Great to talk to you, man.
Always, always. And we're out.